Hey everyone, it's me, EODGamer here, and today we're back with another Honkai Star Rail video. I want to talk about the new 5-star limited Lightcone for Ruanmei here. It looks amazing. Check out this design, so great. It's a 5-star limited Lightcone, pass self in a mirror. I think this one is absolutely fantastic, and you guys have to check out its effect. We'll compare it with like how good it is for Ruanmei versus other free-to-play Lightcones. We'll talk about other options and who else can use this one. So if you're interested in maybe pulling a very solid signature Lightcone, or maybe you're sitting on the fence, hopefully this video will help you like decide or at least make you have a bit more clarity in your decision making process. So first of all, amazing design, and the stats here for any of you who are wondering, 1058529, we'll take a look at these stats versus like the other Lightcones in the standard banner like Bronye's one and against other 4-stars in a little bit, but let's take a look at this amazing effect. So plum fragrance in my bones, that's the effect of the Lightcone. The Lightcone is called pass self in mirror, and this one gives her 60% break effect at superimposition 1. This is compared together with Memories of the Past, which I think is like 56% at superimposition 5, so that outperforms in terms of the first line item. What is interesting here is when the wearer uses their ultimate, increases all allies damage by 24% that lasts 3 turns. For those of you who have checked out my the guide on Ruanmei, which talks about all the other options that you can use except for the signature Lightcone. This video of course going more in depth in the signature Lightcone, but you know that there is a 3-turn rotation for Ruanmei, and if you haven't like checked it out and maybe you're not pulling for this one, check out the build guide video we have on the channel already. It's going to be like super useful to understand like her requirements of what stats you should be focusing on as well. So lasts for 3 turns, which means pretty much if you follow the optimized build that we teach also, you will have basically a guaranteed 24% uptime on all of your allies, which is really amazing, as long as your allies don't move significantly faster than her, because this is like 3 turns. I think it's on their turns, not on like Ruanmei turns, so that's like something to take note of. Should the wearer's break effect exceed or equal to 150%, for Ruanmei, 150% very easy to hit, especially with this 60%, you just need like 90%, and she has it in like her tracers. You have it in like your for example, what's those called, like tracers and like those sub minor effects that she has. You very easily will hit 150. In fact, 180 is my recommended that we should all be targeting. Just make sure that your number currently on any other unit that you're building should be around 125, and you're more or less like good to go, since she gets quite a lot of it from other stats. You will get 1 skill point back, which means that she becomes skill point positive, even more skill point positive. She was already like relatively skill point positive, but this makes her even better if you have the good RNG, but I'll talk about that in a bit. During the start of every wave, all allies regenerate 10 energy. Effects of the same type cannot stack. What this last part just means that if you have like 4 of these, you can't get like 40 energy from each of the different Lightcones at S1 each. But of course, when you have this at higher superimposition, this effect still like gains value. It just means that you can't stack the same type of Lightcone 4 times. That's basically what it means. So my thoughts on this one, a lot of you that watched like the other build guide videos and will realize that other Lightcones in the game and would actually have energy restoration, some form of energy regen, like the Memories of the Past, the 3-star Lightcone, Mashing Cogs. We will go into the game engine in a bit, but more importantly, I want you to know is that this skill point actually is the equivalent of giving you energy. Because now that when you use your ult, you gain 1 skill point back, you actually have ability to, instead of doing a normal skill, basic attack rotation, you can actually go like skill, basic attack, and decide whether you need to scale or basic attack at the last part to get a 3-turn rotation. So it gives you that, in a sense, the energy comes from this optionality. So instead of just directly giving you the energy, it's now giving you a choice. Do you want to use a skill point, or do you not want to use a skill point? At the same time, giving you a bit more break effect, more stats, a bit more damage buffing for the whole team, as well as this like all ally energy restoration. So now that we've talked a bit about this, let's go into the game engine real quick. I'm just going to switch my screen here, and we now see like all of the different Lightcones we have in the game. Of course, this video is recorded before 1.6 is released, that's why we don't have the new one. But first, let's look at the stats in terms of here. We can see the HP is slightly less, but attack stats is like more or less the same as well, which is not really as significant for a Harmony character. But I think this is a Lightcone that a lot of people want to compare it to, and I want to just give you like some of my thoughts talking about Ruanmei specifically. We'll talk about how good the Lightcone is for other units in a little bit, but let's do a quick comparison with this one first. This gives you a lot of restoration. You get 10%, you get 1 skill point every like 2 ultimates that the wearer uses, so it's not as good in terms of this second part here. And Ruanmei doesn't really care too much about this 10% energy restoration rate. It doesn't give her 3-turn rotation guaranteed. If you've checked out our other video already, the 2 other options that we mentioned in that video guarantee a 3-turn rotation. This time you still have to have like a bit of RNG. So this much better for Bronya in my opinion, although you do give like this additional damage buff. Her signature Lightcone for Ruanmei significantly outperforms, and the 2 that really compete very, very closely in my opinion, this is a character that's all about rotations. Turn order matters so much for her. Is Memories of the Past at Super Imposition 5. You get this 8 energy back, which in the signature Lightcone is actually 1 skill point. So that skill point actually allows you to decide, do you want to use a skill or do you want to just like do a normal basic attack rotation? And it more or less is like break even with Memories of the Past. So at least if you get hit a few times, you know that, yep, I'm going to have the energy required. I can give my team that skill point that was generated in that rotation. So that is the comparison. In case any of you who think that Memory of the Past is like superior to the signature Lightcone, it's not the case, because it actually gives you an optionality in this. So that's my thoughts on Memory of the Past versus her signature Lightcone. Signature Lightcone outperforms because it gives you optionality, the whole team buff, energy throughout as well. And we are not even factoring like the last part of her signature Lightcone giving that 10 energy, because it's of course depending on how many stages there are. Sometimes there are 3 stages, sometimes there are 2 phases of enemies depending on the rotation also. And last but not least, I think the important one to consider real quick is Smashing Cogs, which gives 8 energy. For any of you free-to-play players, this is probably a good starting point if any of you are thinking about. Of course, it has very little HP, very little attack stat. HP is probably the one that you guys are more concerned with, and the defense stat is also very low, which makes her probably a bit more squishier. But that's my opinion of Ruanmei. Check out the video which we talked about to get all the break effect stuff. I talk about thresholds on Ruanmei build guide. Check it out. I think it's going to be super useful. But now let's talk about something else, and what other Harmony character can use that Lightcone, and what are my thoughts on it so far. So let me just go here and filter all the Harmony units. We have all of them currently in the game except for Ruanmei herself. So it starts from Bronya. I think that Bronya is likely let me start with the easy ones first, okay? Before we go into like more complicated ones. Esther, I think Esther is going to be like super good with it. She doesn't mind like building a bit of break effect. And let me just see in her tracers, does she have any break effect in her tracers? So she doesn't have any break effect here in her tracers, but fire break damage is generally quite good. And I would say that she is not like a super damage dealer. She has good amounts of energy restoration because of one of her Eidolons here gives her 4 here, gives her increased energy restoration rate, and having that additional skill point makes her less skill point hungry. At the same time, you have your up time very, very quickly most of the time. So if you can spam this 120 that you can give to your whole entire team, you speed buff your allies, you damage buff your allies. She has a bit more break effect, so if she breaks any enemies with fire, it's a significant amount of damage as well. I think it works very, very well with Esther if you have her. So this is just my proxy for Ruanmei, my build and stuff like that. But that is for the first Harmony character. Let's talk about some other characters that I think may benefit a bit from break effect. I think she's not super good with it in terms of break effect per se, and her outburst cost is very high. But this Lightcone, the Ruanmei signature Lightcone, actually turns a lot of Harmony characters. If you can get the uptime and the out, they become super skill point positive. So if you are thinking of looking for a character who is maybe specifically a skill point battery, you can actually use this Lightcone and combo with a lot of characters in the game, especially I think Esther, who has her burst up very, very quickly, and it's like basically spamming it more often than not. She basically funnels a lot of skill points in your team, and that is something to note as well. Tingyun, I don't think she likes to build a lot of break effects, so I don't think it'll be super good on her. You could have her a bit here and there, but I don't. It's like super missing the point. Her burst cost is also not exactly very low, and she generally likes building a bit more attack percentage, so I don't think it's going to work super well on her specifically. So Esther, very good. Tingyun, so-so-ish. Yukong is okay-ish. The skill point refund is nice, but break effect on Imaginary, I don't really like it too much. We already done like a comparison video. If you guys are wondering like test specific on high break effect on imaginary characters, low break effect, what does it do? Check it out on the channel too. Next up we have, is it Hanya? Is Hanya the only one left? Let me just do a quick filter real quick. And yeah, so it looks like Hanya and Bronya. So let's talk about Hanya. I think Hanya break effect is okay. A physical character definitely doesn't mind too much break effect. But one thing for sure is this one is a very, very large burst cost required. Of course, if you can get her rotations upright, the burst cost doesn't matter as much because the damage buff lasts 3 turns. And from what I know, most of the Harmony characters in the game so far more or less are able to hit a 3-turn rotation. especially if they get like hit once or twice. So this one is pretty universal for the damage buff that they give. You get some skill points return. She's already a very skill point positive character, and I do see her using break effect if maybe you just wanted to land a little bit of break effect from a physical slot, but not super perfect by any means. And last but not least, I think we want to talk about Bronya, which a lot of people might be thinking about. In my honest opinion, I think that Ruanmei signature Lightcone is excellent for Bronya. You lose out a bit of this 10% energy, and you lose out on this like 30% damage buff. But the thing about Bronya is if you can get her rotations on her uptime for her ult very well, that 24% attack buff to the entire team actually makes her less of an individual hyper carry kind of buffer. This one is more like individual hyper carry because you are focusing on your one unit dealing 30% more damage when you do that bump. You have like some sort of energy restoration. But Ruanmei's Lightcone is like whole team more attack, more damage bonus. So instead of 30%, 24 damage, 24% for the whole team for 3 turns. So longer duration, more, but absolute quantity wise, slightly less only. It's like 20% less if I'm doing the quick math right. You get a bit more break effect instead of energy regeneration, which is not very ideal for Bronya herself since she doesn't really care too much about break. Unless, of course, if you're playing with E4, then maybe as the game tends to a very late game, you might even do some break damage with Bronya through this like E4 win attack that she does. Since she always guarantees a crit, you can build her like for break effect, just crit damage and skip everything else. I think it'll be interesting to consider as well. But more importantly, out of everything is it guarantees a skill point for her. Especially if you feel that you don't have this one yet, or even if you do have this, she becomes possibly, and I'm just saying possibly, even like skill point neutral, or maybe even skill point positive, depending on how your comp looks like as well. Especially if you have a multiple character that don't really need her to press E all the time. You might even be neutral on Bronya eventually with the Ruanmei signature Lightcone. And moving forward, I think Ruanmei signature Lightcone, and let me just go back into the Hoyo Lab official post again. And moving forward, I think any character that is Harmony that has a very low burst cost will be a pseudo skill point buffer for the entire team, which means you don't need like a specific character to be a skill point battery, because as long as you can spam the burst, you hit like this 150 threshold, which is quite easy to meet because this is like 60 already, 90, you can get the rest from like set bonuses and whatnot. So 90 for most characters I think is not that difficult. At most you just switch for example, the link rope into a break effect link rope. I think that's like 60% there. And the rest can be easily found from substats as well. So one skill point recovered every time you use your ult. That is really insane, especially if like a character on low burst cost in future will be very interesting. And you give a damage buff for 3 whole turns. Too long in my opinion. This one should be like slightly nerfed to maybe like 2 turns or less, to be like much more functional. But overall, good for us if we are planning to pull. And this Lightcone banner I think is super good as well, because if we just check out like the other Lightcones here, you have Planetary Rendezvous, which is amazing at S5. It gives like a 24% damage bonus. Anyone will like it if you're playing like mono elemental teams. You have Day 1 of My New Life, which is amazing for new players, or even like late game players who have a destruction unit. You slap this on, your whole team like gets damage reduction, super good, and a little bit of that defense buffing for the main character too. And of course, a Secret Vow is amazing at S5 if you're pulling for Blade. Share, you could probably borrow it for a while. Doesn't really combo super well, but at S5, this is really very strong, especially if you're a Blade lover. Super good Lightcone to have. I think this is a fantastic Lightcone banner in my opinion. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Are you planning to pull for this? Do you want to pull it, or what's your reasons for looking at this and considering? Let me know in the comments below. And anyways guys, thank you guys so much for watching again, and see you in the next video.